Your dog is standing completely still, staring at the wall, and then they bark. Not a distracted bark, not a playful one. A full, serious, deliberate bark directed at a point in space where absolutely nothing appears to be. You look. You see nothing. You check the window. Nobody there. You examine the corner they're fixated on. Empty. And yet your dog is certain enough about whatever they're responding to that they have chosen to use their voice. Most people's interpretation of this moment is immediate and automatic. The dog is being weird, maybe anxious, maybe dramatic. Maybe they saw a shadow or startled themselves or are just having an odd moment that doesn't mean anything. That interpretation feels reasonable. It is also, in most cases, almost entirely wrong, because what you just witnessed is not your dog reacting to nothing. It is your dog reacting to something that is completely real, something that their sensory system can detect and yours cannot. And to understand why that happens, you need to understand something fundamental about the gap between what dogs perceive and what humans do. Start with hearing. The average adult human can perceive sounds up to approximately 20,000 Hz. That upper limit is the ceiling of your auditory world. Above it, you hear nothing. Not because nothing exists, but because your ears were not built to detect it. Dogs were built differently. Research consistently shows that dogs can hear sounds ranging from 45,000 Hz up to 65,000 Hz. The precise upper limit varies by breed and individual, but the consistent finding is that dogs operate in an auditory range that extends more than twice as far as ours into the ultrasonic spectrum. And the anatomy that makes this possible is remarkable. Dog ears are not just more sensitive, they are more functional. While human outer ears are largely fixed and passive, a dog has 18 or more muscles controlling each ear independently. Those ears can swivel, tilt, and rotate to orient toward a sound source with precision that no human skull can match. According to comparative anatomy research, this ear mobility increases a dog's hearing sensitivity by as much as 28 decibels, the equivalent of turning up the volume on a sound you can already hear. Now consider what lives in your walls, in your attic, under your floor, in the gap behind your refrigerator, in the space beneath your porch. Mice, rats, bats, and many insects communicate in the ultrasonic range. The fundamental frequency of mouse vocalizations has been measured at approximately 40,000 Hz, completely inaudible to you, well within the perceptual range of your dog. When your dog stands in the middle of the living room at 2 in the afternoon and barks at the wall, there is a reasonable possibility that they are listening to an entire conversation happening inside that wall that you will never hear. This is not speculation. Animal behaviorists and veterinary professionals who investigate unexplained barking episodes frequently find their resolution when an exterminator reveals a rodent infestation. The owner had no idea was there. Invisible to human senses, audible to the dog who had been alerting about it for weeks. But sound is only the beginning, because hearing is not even close to a dog's most powerful sensory system. Olfaction is, and the scale of the difference between canine and human smell perception is difficult to fully comprehend without concrete numbers. Dogs have approximately 300 million olfactory receptors in their nasal cavity. Humans have around 6 million. That difference alone is staggering, but it extends further. The area of a dog's brain devoted specifically to analyzing odor is, proportionally speaking, roughly 40 times larger than the comparable region in the human brain. Researchers at Florida State University's Sensory Research Institute estimated through rigorously designed study that dogs' sense of smell is somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 times more acute than ours. To put that in terms of scale, what you can see at a third of a mile, a dog could see at 3,000 miles and still perceive with equal clarity. That is the approximate ratio, not slightly better, not twice as good. Orders of magnitude beyond what your nose is capable of registering. Dogs also have a secondary olfactory system that humans entirely lack. The vomeronasal organ, or Jacobson's organ, sits inside the nasal cavity and opens through the roof of the mouth. Its nerves lead directly to the brain and are dedicated to detecting chemical compounds that have no smell at all in the ordinary sense. Pheromones, hormonal signals, chemical traces of biological states in other animals and humans. It is, in effect, a separate sensory channel for chemical communication that runs parallel to ordinary smell. When your dog raises their head, pivots toward an empty doorway and barks, they may be responding to a scent signature that passed through a moment ago. An animal that crossed outside, a person who walked by, a biological trace that drifted under the door and is still present in the air of the room. To you, the room is empty and the air is neutral. To your dog, there is a story written in that air that they are reading in real time. The dog is not barking at nothing. The dog is responding to evidence you cannot access. And the behaviors that follow the bark often contain additional information that most owners fail to read. A dog that barks once, orients briefly, then relaxes and moves on. That is a dog that detected something, assessed it, determined it was not a threat, and returned to baseline. The sensory trigger was real. The resolution was normal. Nothing is wrong. A dog that barks repeatedly over a sustained period, that cannot settle, that returns to the same spot in the room, that escalates rather than de-escalates. That is a dog responding to a persistent stimulus. Something is still present, still audible or detectable, and the dog's system is still receiving input and generating an alert. A dog whose barking has no directional focus, who barks at open space without orienting to a specific point, who vocalizes with an expression that looks confused rather than alert, whose episodes increase at night and are accompanied by pacing, disorientation, or changes in how they interact with familiar people and familiar routines. That is a third and importantly different category, and it deserves specific attention. Because barking at apparently nothing is one of the documented behavioral signs of canine cognitive dysfunction, the neurological condition that functions in dogs the way Alzheimer's disease functions in humans. Research has established the prevalence with some consistency. Approximately 28% of dogs between 11 and 12 years old show at least one sign of cognitive dysfunction. That figure rises to 68% in dogs between 15 and 16 years old. As the brain changes with age, a dog's capacity to accurately process sensory input diminishes. A dog with cognitive dysfunction may misinterpret silence as a threat, may respond to internal neurological signals as if they were external stimuli, may vocalize in response to something that exists only in a disordered perception. The bark that looks the same from the outside, dog staring at wall, dog barking at nothing, is driven by a completely different internal state. One reflects a functioning sensory system detecting something real that the owner cannot perceive. The other reflects a nervous system losing its ability to accurately interpret its own experience. Most owners cannot distinguish between these two cases without information. Here is the information. A dog barking at something real is alert. Their body is directed toward a specific point. Their ears are positioned toward a source. They may move to investigate. When they move on cleanly. The behavior has a beginning, a middle, and a resolution. A dog showing signs of cognitive dysfunction is not clearly directional. They may bark at open space or at the ceiling. They may seem puzzled or distressed rather than focused and alert. The barking may escalate at night, intensifying after dark when environmental stimuli are lowest and the brain's failing capacity for orientation becomes most apparent. They may pace without clear purpose. They may react to your presence with unfamiliarity that is unusual for an animal who knows you well. If your dog is under 8 years old and has started barking at the wall, the explanation is almost certainly sensory. Something real is there that you cannot detect. A check for pests, a scan for environmental changes, an awareness that the world your dog inhabits is far more populated with information than the world your senses describe. If your dog is over 10 and this behavior is new, or if it is accompanied by any of the changes described above, altered sleep, altered interaction, altered navigation of familiar spaces, that deserves a conversation with a veterinarian. Cognitive dysfunction in dogs is manageable. It does not have to progress as fast as it would without intervention. The window for meaningful treatment is earlier than most people realize, and it opens with recognizing that the bark at nothing is not nothing. It never was. Your dog has been living inside a sensory experience that you have had no access to since the day they arrived. The world they experience is louder, richer, more chemically complex, and more populated with information than the world your senses describe to you. Every time they respond to something you cannot perceive, they are not malfunctioning. They are operating exactly as their biology intended. Receiving signals from a frequency range, a chemical register, an olfactory resolution that your own perceptual system simply does not reach. The next time your dog stands at the wall and barks at nothing, ask the right question. Not, what is wrong with my dog? But, what is my dog hearing that I cannot? The answer, most of the time, is something real. If this changed how you understand that bark, subscribe and leave a comment. Has your dog ever barked at something that turned out to be a pest you didn't know was there? Or has the pattern been something else entirely?